What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 9 edition of The Game Plan. It is a big week, big week for fantasy football. Me, myself, I am in a massive, big-time matchup in my home league in the Golden Pony Fantasy Football Experience. It's absolutely crazy. I cannot believe we're already here in Week 9. Shout out to everyone in the chat. DP, what's going on, everybody? Grimy34, what's going on? Hey, the vulgarity. But hey, sure, let's go Lions. Just traded T-Law for 25 first in downs and a 14-team super flex. Use your QB3-4. I don't hate it. I love downs rest of the season, and now you got that 25 first. But anyway, I'm glad that the chat is popping. Again, a lot of energy here. It's Week 9. Big week. Everyone says it's the biggest week. I'm not going to try to do that. That's crazy. Anyhow, I'm very excited for today's episode. Of course, we're going through the rankings. Got QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end. We're going to do a little segment called This Week in WoRP. And then, of course, I got my Kiwoom call of the week. But first, before we get into any of that, I got to make sure I do one thing. Because it's one of my favorite things. Gets me hyped. I got to roll that intro. See you in a second. So we got some news and some notes to go over before we get into the next part of the episode, just because it's important. You know, the reports get dropped by Adam Schefter. He has that like midnight bomb every Saturday. And we're just going to go through here. It looks like Gabe Davis is a long shot to play, but his teammate, the player that we would much rather be playing, is Brian Thomas. He looks like he's going to play. Ian Rappaport says that Tank Dell is likely to play also against the Eagles, and Travis Etienne is going to play. Both of these guys are kind of low in my ranks because of the distribution. Who knows exactly how it will go, but it looks like they will be healthy. Deontay Johnson is going to suit up for the new team, his Baltimore Ravens, but he's only going to play about 15 snaps. Even in those snaps, I think they'll be big for us in fantasy to kind of understand what his role will look like here with his new team. Adam Thielen has been on the trade block, which would be great for us in fantasy. Xavier Legette is expected to play. Tony Pollard, despite not practicing, is expected to play. Sorry for everyone who picked up Julius Chestnut, myself included. I did pick him up where I could. Both Brian Robinson Jr., Josh Jacobs, Puka Nacua all are expected to play. It seems like Puka Nacua's knee setback, if you want to call it that, his thing in practice was not serious, and the reports have been pretty optimistic, even the day of. So that's kind of been good for us in fantasy, obviously. Dalton Reisner, the only offensive lineman I'm going to mention, he's going to be activated for injured reserve. Good for the Vikings. He's a good interior lineman, so it's good to have him back. Kendre Miller back on the IR somewhere, somehow. Dennis Allen looked at one of his coaches and said, told you so. Kind of the same story, or different day when it comes to Kendre Miller. Drake May is going to play this week. He cleared his concussion protocol. Tyron Tracy cleared his concussion protocol over the week, so he is going to play this week against the Commanders. And that's kind of I think it's a pretty positive injury day. It seemed like a lot of the questionable tags they are playing. We already knew DK was going to be out. We've kind of come to grips with the fact that DK was going to be out, so we were making arrangements. I didn't even rank him this week. So it seems as if the injuries have, I don't know if they've fallen in our favor because there's been just a shitload of injuries, but as we head into this Sunday Week 9 matchup, it's not all that bad. See people starting to come in the chat. Fizzle Dollars, what's going on? Fizz, good to see you. Chef is in the chat. Sean is in the chat. Hit that vape at the start. I see you, boss. Yes, sir. Got the vape right next to me. Just keeping things fun, keeping things light. It's football Sunday, folks. All right, let's get into the rankings, shall we? We got a couple. And that is the first time I've ever Apple moused myself. I've done it on shows in which I'm with somebody, but today I finally swiped myself out of So we went ahead and swiped ourselves out. It's all right. It's okay. We can. We're back. We're back. That's why you tune in here. It gets crazy. Hold on. My internet's not great right now. Give me 1 second, guys. Let me see if I can fix this. All right, let me see if I can fix. Let's see if we can right the ship. How's the audio, guys? Yeah, I'm lagging. Yeah. Let me see if I'm still lagging. Let me know. I'm trying to just set some things up. For whatever reason, it's just been looking. I'm getting that signal. Okay. I think I might be okay now. Let's see. All right. Let's refocus. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. That's why we do it live. We do it live for we do it live. That's why we do it live, folks. Let's get in. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here, we're going to talk about a couple quarterbacks. We're back again. Now we good. All right, Wood. All right, sweet. Yeah, just making sure that everything was getting okay here on the internet side of things. But anyway, we got the rankings scrolling at the bottom. The quarterback rankings 1 through 28, I think, is what's ranked. But I have 2 quarterbacks that I want to talk about specifically, whether it be how they've produced, what I've seen from them, how I'll be ranking them going forward, whatever. It's just a couple of quarterbacks that I think needed to be talked about on today's show. The first quarterback I'm going to mention is Bo Nix. I had mislabeled here. Bo Nix. And to this week, Bo Nix, he's actually ranked number 6 in my quarterback rankings. He's got a pretty good matchup this week against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have actually been the most advantageous matchup for quarterbacks this season. So it's poised to be a pretty favorable one. We're used to the Ravens just being such dogs on defense. It just has not been the case this year. Now, when you look at the analytical profile of Nix, this is actually what was a bit. It was positive. It was exciting to see. I'll be honest. He's somebody who's throwing the ball downfield. I thought early on he'd be a little bit more of a game manager, but he's 5th in air yards. He's a guy this year that he's not just super touchdown dependent, which I think is big for a quarterback here. He doesn't have a 6 touchdown game. That's really just kind of carrying everything. His expected fantasy points per game are as strong as his actual fantasy points per game. And his accuracy's been there. And that's kind of what we expected out of Bo Nix coming out of Oregon, was that he would be accurate. But then you look at the fantasy production overall, and you start to see a picture of a quarterback that's going to produce for us in fantasy. And the matchups, they've been advantageous for him, no question. But it hasn't been the best matchups. I mean, he was a top 10 quarterback against the Chargers, and the Chargers have been a good defense. But against the Vegas Raiders in week 5, he was QB8, QB9, like I mentioned, against the Chargers, QB19 against the Saints, and then QB2 last week against the Panthers. He took care of business against a soft matchup. So I guess what I'm saying here is, with Bo Nix playing this well, with the analytics supporting his play like it has, Bo Nix is someone I got in the top 10 this week. And if the matchup looks good, if the matchup seems to be one that we should be taking advantage of in fantasy football, in my super flex leagues, I mean, this is a guy we thought we were going to be given a red shirt year to in our rookie drafts, and I don't think we have to. I think Bo Nix can firmly be placed in your super flex spot. And in our 1 QB seasonal leagues, Bo Nix is a good guy to have on the bench, a good guy to alternate with. Like if you've been streaming, or if you've been relying on a guy like Dak Prescott or CJ Stroud, who just hasn't been all that effective for us in fantasy, Bo Nix is a good player to go ahead and add throughout a lot of the formats here. So I'm very excited for what I'm seeing from Bo Nix, and we might see a lot better player than expected earlier on. Kind of along the same lines as how I talked about Brian Thomas Jr. last week. The next quarterback that I'd like to bring up is, in fact, Matthew Stafford. The reason why I want to bring him up, he's not ranked super high in my ranks. He's QB 16 this week in my weekly QB rankings, but he does have the 15th best matchup, so it's kind of in line. It's not the greatest matchup against the Seahawks, but the reason why I wanted to speak about Matthew Stafford, the reason why I wanted to bring him up, is this is a vet that we've grown to, rely on in fantasy, a vet that's been around for a long time, someone that has been good. He still has the arm talent. But the reason why we can now start leaning on him more in fantasy is he's got the boys back. The boys are back in town. Not Goff. Stafford is throwing to Puka Nacua. He's throwing to his guys again. He's throwing to Cooper Kupp. And in the 2 weeks that he's had both of these weapons, so that's week 1 and then last week, week 8, he was QB 13, scored 15.6 fantasy points in week 1, and then in week 8 last week against a tough defense, Minnesota Vikings, 25.8 fantasy points. He was the QB 5 overall. So, again, Matthew Stafford is someone that is in the middle of my QB ranks, but as long as his wide receivers stay healthy, as long as he continues to look like a little bit of the vintage Matthew Stafford, this is a quarterback that could continue to climb in my weekly rankings and could be a permanently wedged in the Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, and Tua Tagovailoa tier. So he's definitely worth bringing up. Matthew Stafford's on the up and up, and that's good for us in fantasy because we also are very reliant. We've invested a ton in those wide receivers, so it makes sense. We want it to be very positive all around for Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and those weapons. Next guy I would like to talk about the first running back on today's show, Tyrone Tracy Jr. Very excited for him to have cleared concussion protocol and be on the field against the Commanders, because it's a pretty good matchup, middle of the road, 16th best for running backs. I have him ranked at running back 11. How could you just not really kind of fall for the I mean, he was so raw coming out of college, and he had no draft capital, but the fact that he had the receiving chops that he did in college and the playmaking ability that he showed in college and how good he looked at the combine, his agility, his burst, all of it checks out in a major way. He's got the size to be a running back 1, and now we're seeing a player kind of take the opportunity and run with it. With Devin Singletary out a few weeks, he jumped in the role and just hasn't given it back. He's a top 10 player in yards per touch, which is a good metric for a player that both runs, is a rusher and receiver out of the backfield. And fantasy-wise, we've now seen 3 out of his last 4 games be over 12 fantasy points. 14 against Seattle in week 5, 22.7. He was running back 5 in week 6 against Cincinnati. And then against Pittsburgh last week, 23 fantasy points, 150 total yards. It seems as if Tyrone Tracy is here to stay, and Brian Daboll loves him in this offense. Season high 20 carries last week, and he has now gone 3 games in a row with multiple catches, 3 games in a row with 3 or more targets. Tyrone Tracy is a running back that is running back 11 in my ranks this week, and will perennially be a top 14, top 12, top 10 running back as long as he's continuously getting this production, this volume. Which is great. We love to see on players, especially in our seasonal drafters, because the rookies come at a value. You get them at the end of drafts. So a lot of my redraft rosters are just littered with the Tyrone Tracy's, Jalen Wright, who hasn't fired, but you kind of backload those rosters with those type of running backs. And if 1 or 2 of them hit, you're really off to the races now in the team builds. If you used the shit list, if you used our draft rankings to help build your rosters in seasonal, then you're absolutely loving the Tyrone Tracy Explosione. The next running back is, quite frankly, the exact opposite or the exact same. I don't know how we should look at it, but what I am going to look at it is absolute confusion, maybe a little bit of, I don't want to call it dread. I don't want to say I feel sick when I talk about this player, but we got to talk about Alexander Mattison, folks. We got to talk about Mattison. Madison's a top 24 running back in fantasy football. Alexander Mattison is a top 30 running back on a points per game basis. Alexander Mattison is a top 100 overall WoRP player. And when I look at the AWoRP, he's still inside the top 100, and AWoRP adjusts for starting probabilities. And nobody was starting him earlier. That's going to hurt his WoRP. And when you look at the AWoRP, and he's still a top 100 player. He's still been as valuable in fantasy in our 1QB leagues as Austin Eckler, Chase Brown, Tank Dell. Unbelievable. But this week, again, I don't know how to approach Alexander Madison. He's my running back 26 in the week. I don't ever see myself putting him in the top 20, but I do need to bring him up because if you're in need of a running back and he's being floated around, whether it be via trade or just still not rostered, we have to look at Alexander Madison as a viable running back in fantasy football. And I don't know. Is it the same as Tyrone Tracy, as he just elevated himself up to beyond measures of what we thought, or is he completely different because he's in the league and no one was excited and people were excited about Tyrone Tracy? I don't know how to look at it. But when I look at his profile, how he's performed, only 3 weeks he hasn't scored double digits. And one of those weeks last week was 9.4 fantasy points. He's got 4 touchdowns. He's taken the Zeus White role, and he's completely pushed Dylan Lobb out of the way. I was dead set on Lobb getting some opportunity. He got 1 carry, fumbled the ball. He's on the bench. And here we go. Alexander Madison. Decent matchup here today. Again, middle of the road. 13th most advantageous matchups for running backs, the Cincinnati Bengals. But an over-under, it's not the lowest on the slate. It's not great, but at the same time, if the Raiders are going to be 7-point road underdogs, he's going to get some cheap dump-offs. And Alexander Madison is going to be a top 24 running back again. I can't believe we're here, but I just needed to bring him up because sometimes you just need somebody to tell it to you. You need somebody to sit you down and say, hey, come on to the game plan. Let's talk. Let's chat. Got something to bring up. Got something I want to say. Is it about time that we put some more respect on Alexander Madison's name? Yeah, I feel like we should. Before we get into the wide receivers, let's look into the chat. Let's see if we got any questions in the chat. We want to make sure that we answer because we are game planning to dominate our week 3 or week 9 matchups. While Jaden Daniels at 3, Chef's a little confused. Yeah, he's just been so good. It just really that simple. Jaden Daniels at 3, he was a producer last week, and it all came on the Hail Mary at the end of the game. It just, some guys always find themselves atop the scoring for fantasy, and Daniels is on that track right now. So, yeah, I still got him at 3, but he is in that same tier as the 2 behind him, Lamar and Allen. So, I mean, if you have Josh Allen and you have Jaden Daniels somehow and you want to play Allen, I get that. They're in that pretty much that tier. Levi, what's up, brother? We're going to start 2 full-point PBR, Chuba Hubbard, BTJ, or Amari Cooper. So BTJ for me is one that I had been fading, not thinking he was going to play. It looks like he will. He'll settle in somewhere in my top 28 receivers. He'll probably be just ahead of Amari Cooper. I have a Cooper at 25, but I think he's going to have to come down a little. I think BTJ is going to go in there. So I'm going to go BTJ, and I'm going to go Chuba Hubbard against the Saints here. So if full point PPR, give me Hubbard and give me BTJ. Start 2, Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, Jaden Reed, or Zay Flowers. So I've quote unquote faded Zay Flowers. He's still a top 24 play. So I'm going to go Flowers, and I'm going to go Reed here. Slayer Stacker. So let's go with Reed. Let's go with Flowers. I will say this about Reed, and this actually goes for the entire matchup. It looks like bad weather in Green Bay. The reason why I'm still okay with Reed is short passes, end arounds. They'll manufacture him touches as well as anyone on that roster, especially with Josh Jacobs being a little banged up. So I'm still okay with Flowers and Reed, even with the thing. But I will say, if you are in the Dynasty Leagues where you have kickers, no Bates, no McManus today. It looks a little crappy out there in Green Bay. Half-point PPR, need 1, Puka or Brian Robinson or Amari Cooper. I would go Puka if you're not worried about the injuries. I'm not. I got him as a top 10 play, so I'm going Puka. I was also very adamant about playing Puka where I had him last week on Thursday night. So I'm very pro Puka. But I understand the worry. Brian Robinson would be my second option here. But I'm definitely going to go Puka here if I had him. If I had that decision to make, I'm going to go Puka. Start 2, Iverson, Reed, or BTJ. I don't like Marv this week. He's got a tough matchups, but I still have him as a top 20 play on the talent alone. So we're going to go Marv, and we're going to go BTJ. We're going to avoid the weather in Green Bay with this tie here. We'll go James, so we'll go Harrison, and we'll go BTJ. We'll go with a couple of rookies. Let's see. Starting Madison is like trying to eat with the flu. I'm sick to my stomach thinking about it. Yep. It's not that great. What's up, Elijah? Thank you guys for tapping in. Thank you for sticking with me through the internet issues. It feels like we are ready to rock and roll. It seems like everything is good to go. And while I have you here, while we are engaged in a very good lineup conversation, make sure you come back to the player profiler. Oh, man, Freudian slip. Old job, South Harmon YouTube. It was eventually going to happen. The South Harmon YouTube channel for Starter Shit with Eric Bannock, T-Rock, and Matt Dennis at 12 Eastern Standard Time. Avery Mastriani, Start 2, Lad McConkey, DJ Moore, Marv Harrison, Brian Thomas. Damn, what a freaking lineup that is. I love DJ Moore this week, so I'm playing DJ Moore. And I do like me some Lad McConkey, but I like Marv a little bit more. So I'm going to go DJ Moore and Maserati Marv. Definitely need help with this. Which two? JD, Carr, Knicks, or Darnold? I'm going JD, and I'm going Knicks. Give me the rookies, baby. Hurts or Daniels? I got Jalen Hurts as my QB1 this week, so I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts. Is this a real South Harmon fan? Yeah, is this the real South Harmon Fantasy Football? Yeah, it is. I might have just said the wrong thing, but it was bound to happen. I mean, it's just Freudian slip. Is Mooney for real? I have an inbox for Godwin and Winnington for Mooney. Mooney, I talked a lot about Mooney in a past video, so check out my last solo video. He's right around top 50 in WoRP. He's definitely valuable. In terms of that, if you're trying to win, I would move Godwin and Winnington. I don't think Winnington's ever going to provide much value. In Godwin, obviously, he's out for the year. And Mooney has been good. Yes, it's erratic. If this is best ball, it's a smash. Johnny Detroit, but even if it's lineup, I will ride the highs with the lows with Darnell Mooney in this lineup, in this team with the Falcons. He's been pretty damn good. Devontae Smith or Jaden Reed? Give me Devontae Smith. Is this the real South Harmon? Dalvin Cook, Kamani Vidal, and running back 2 slot. Give me Vidal. Dalvin's dust, brother. Dalvin is dust, brother. DB, I know. I'm surprised it went this long. I'm actually shocked I hadn't said it before. So, it is what it is. GM Dak or Kyler Murray? Well, Rona, good morning to you. I do have Dak and Kyler back-to-back in my rankings, but I'm going to go Dak. The more I think about it, the more I love the 1 o'clock slot, home game, Falcons, Cowboys. Feels like there's going to be a lot of points. Vegas thinks so. They had it as under a 50.5 earlier in the week. So I'm starting to break some ties with Dak Prescott. I'm starting to get pretty excited about Dak. So, I'm going Dak over Kyler. Bucky, Mostert, Michael Wilson, last flex, PPR. I don't like the Bucky Irvin situation. It seems like the toe injury is going to keep him questionable, so I don't love that for him going forward. Mostert again, is just quietly doing his damn thing on this team. I am going to go with Mostert. Believe it or not, I'm going to go with Mostert and hope he finds the end zone because Wilson's been TD dependent and the defense for the Bears is pretty good. So I'm going to go with Mostert and Bucky. Man, the toe thing. I don't know if he's going to lose out touches. He was good last week, though, so what are you going to do? But I'm going to go with Mostert there. Will Levis or Bryce Young got a ton of injuries on one of my team right now. Well, I think it's going to be Mason Rudolph. I don't think Will Levis is playing this week. And they're at the bottom of my ranks. I would just go Bryce. Go with a tiny bit of upside. Double XP weekend. Yes. And I do believe it's double XP and double weapon XP. Everyone's working towards dark matter or dark mass, whatever this thing is. I'm not sure. I don't have the game. But, yeah, you got to be careful. He was definitely grinding some Call of Duty over the weekend. James Waddle, Cooper, Wandale, Pittman, pick 2. I'm going Pittman. I'm back on the Pittman train with the confidence of Joe Flacco. I'm back on the Pittman train. I'm in the top 15 play. Waddle, it's only a matter of time until he breaks out. I'm sick of waiting. I got him at wide receiver 30. I got Cooper higher. So I'm going to go with Amari Cooper, and I'm going to go with Michael Pittman. So now, all right, we got some questions out of the way. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, MTT. Grimy, thank you for sticking on. Ron, thank you. Elijah, DB, of course. Guys, thank you so much for rocking with me. This is the best. I love the game plan every single Sunday. Yeah, and then when the internet finally corrects itself, I don't have to feel like I'm panicking. And I started to feel like I was panicking that a little bit. I was saying weird things, whatever. Let's keep it moving. We're going to talk a little wide receivers now. And the first wide receiver that I got to bring up is actually 2 wide receivers. It's Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman. So this week in my ranks, Tillman is wide receiver 28, and I have Elijah Moore at wide receiver 35. After Amari Cooper was traded, these two wide receivers they've really kind of broken out, especially Cedric Tillman. So we'll start with Tillman. So this week, it's kind of a shit matchup against the Chargers. That's kind of why he's lower in my ranks at 28. Better matchups, I think he could be in the top 25. I was talking to my man, Cody Carpentier, on the hurdle this past week and on the walkthrough, and he sees a lot of Nico Collins in terms of the trajectory of his career arc and the style of play, the archetype. And Cody was right about Nico Collins before Nico Collins. I have been a pretty staunch fader of Nico Collins. I have really been a hater, if you will, about Nico Collins. Even up to this year, I was fading Nico Collins relative to Diggs and even Tank Dell. Of course, not factoring last year's breakout, but still. And I was wrong. And sometimes in fantasy, you got to know when you're wrong. Listen to the people who were right. Cody was right. I was wrong in that regard. And he's probably going to clip that and use that sounder forever. I kind of just set myself up for that one. But Tillman, he's got the size, 6'3", 213, above average speed. He's got good burst, fantastic catch radius coming out of Tennessee. And now over the last 2 weeks, since Amari Cooper has been out of town, he's seen 21 targets, caught 15 of them for 170, 180 yards total and 2 TDs. He's been wide receiver 10 and wide receiver 3 without Amari Cooper. And remember, the first week started with Deshaun, and then, of course, Jameson came in relief there. So Tillman is someone that in our seasonal leagues, he's still available. And in our casual leagues, people are definitely still sleeping on him. Don't let them wake up. Go get Tillman right now. If you can get him on your seasonal leagues, go get him right now. He's someone that's going to make a difference down the stretch, who does have some favorable matchups after this week against the Chargers. And then, of course, Elijah Moore. Anytime a guy gets 19 targets over the last 2 games, that's a player you have to respect, a player you have to put on your radar. And in that, he's still caught 14 of those. The yardage hasn't been there in PPR, but in PPR formats, he's been a top 28 receiver each of the last 2 weeks. And again, this is a guy that is going to play in the slot. He's ran over 30 routes each of the last 2 games. He's seen 2 red zone targets each of the last 2 games. And despite not having a ton of yards, last week he had the 85. He did have 95 air yards, so they were pushing the ball a little bit more this week. That's the most air yards he's seen in 2024. And he feels like he's been in the league forever. He's still 24 years old. This is a former second-round pick, a player that was traded for a second-round pick. There's a lot to be excited about when it comes to Elijah Moore. So both Moore and Tillman, they're here now, and they're definitely worth valuing. They're definitely worth keeping an eye on, and definitely someone I'm going to report back on in a couple weeks as I can bring some more WoRP data to see if that value has truly withheld like it's appeared to in fantasy in terms of just our surface stats. So I wanted to bring them up. The next guy I'm going to bring up is everyone's favorite sleeper this week, Jalen Coker. The Holy Cross undrafted free agent is getting his chance. Deontay Johnson was traded away. Adam Thielen is still on IR. He can also be traded away. Xavier Legette has been banged up. And then, of course, Jonathan Mingo is, Jonathan Mingo. So Jalen Coker will get that shot this week against the New Orleans Saints. That's a top 10 matchup in terms of how an advantageous matchup for wide receivers. So I have him at wide receiver 31. I know there's probably going to be someone out there that ranks him higher than that. I wanted to be a little bit conservative because, again, undrafted guy. But he's got the intangibles. He's got the size. He's got the go up and get it ability. That was the skill set that popped out to me the most when I was doing my summer scouting, or not summer scouting, but off-season scouting. And then last week, in his first game in which he had a snap share over 65%, his first game where he ran over 30 routes, he had 6 targets, caught 4 of them for 78 yards and a touchdown. He was a top 20 wide receiver last week in 103 air yards. So they were going deep to the rookie. And now against this matchup with Derek Carr, and I know Derek Carr doesn't play defense, but Derek Carr is going to theoretically get the Saints offense to play better, to play faster. And then at the end of the day, that's going to help push the Panthers and have to make them play catch up or go pound for pound, punch for punch with their opposition. So I like the Coker play. I actually like it. So I told my wife to play him in our Cousins League. So, that's putting a lot on the line. You tell your wife a lineup decision. If she listens and it works, I ain't watching the night game, if you feel me. But if it goes the wrong, I'm watching the night game. And I'm watching Monday night. And maybe be sleeping on the couch. So let's move on to the tight ends, and then we'll get back into the chat. The first tight end that I wanted to speak about was Cade Otton. Cade Otton is seemingly he's trending in the direction to be one of the most valuable tight ends based on the lack of draft capital. Like, this is a guy that was being selected outside of the top 175, was really an afterthought for most of our seasonal formats. But this week, he comes in as my tight end 4 on the week. And there's a clear path to him being the tight end 1 overall this week. Cade Otton is tight end 10 on a points per game basis, tight end 6 overall. He has over 300 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. He's been solid, but now without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, he's been elite. So over the last 2 weeks, 20 targets for Cade Otton. I'm not lying to you folks. 20 targets over these last 2 weeks. 17 receptions, 181 total yards. He's been tight end 5 and tight end 1 in weeks 7 and 8. I mean, he's been on the field a ton, running over 40 routes, getting snap shares over 90%. He's gotten 4 red zone targets over these last 2 weeks. He's becoming Baker Mayfield's number 1 option. We didn't see Jalen McMillan fire. We didn't see Raheem Jarrett do much. We didn't see a lot of Trey Palmer. We saw a ton come from Cade Otton. And then we look at the matchup. Look at the matchup this week against Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. It is the single most advantageous matchup for tight ends in fantasy football. He's going to be crazy, crazy sought after. So there's no chance he's available. But I suggest this after this week, because you might have run out of time. He's my favorite tear down candidate. If you have a Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, if you any tight end that has juicy value in your league, and you know your league's better than I do, if you could down tier from that tight end to Cade Otton, I'm even talking Travis Kelce. I'm talking the top of the top. The only one I'm staying away from maybe is Brock, maybe George Kittle. We'll talk a little bit more about Kittle, but even Brock, I would, the option to take Brock and get a substantial running back, especially in seasonal leagues, because trading in seasonal leagues can be so tough this time of year. Teams kind of quit. It's tough to find the value for the one team versus the other team when one's contending, one's struggling, however you break it down. But Cade Otton is a guy he's in my top 5 this week, and he's probably going to stay inside my top 8 all year, as long as the action's there. And this is good for Cade Otton and going into his for his 3rd year here. And this is a guy that's always run a lot of routes. Even early on in his career, he would always be on the field running routes, being on the field, blocking everything. It just, the targets didn't go his way. But now he's got 51 targets. He's seeing 6.4 targets a game on the year. That's with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans for most of the season. So Cade Otton, let's fire him up this week. Let's get him on our teams for the home stretch. Cade Otton's for real, guys. Another player that is definitely for real. Another player that, again, I'm not going to put him in the Madison tier, because Madison's really just been kind of not loved on. This guy has definitely had love. We've had love for this player many years throughout his career, but he's still freaking doing the damn thing. That's why I got to talk about him, and that's Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz this week is my QB 12. He's settled. I said this earlier in the week. He's going to be ranked every week between 8 and 12, and it's just going to flow based on matchups, based on if Dalton Kincaid has a good matchup, if Sam Laporta has a bad matchup, if Tucker Kraft has a good. He's just going to flow in that 8 to 12, and it's really because the volume's there. I mean, Jaden Daniels, through thick and thin, is finding himself some Zach Ertz. He's got 45 targets, 6th most in the NFL. He has a 20% target share. That's 7th most amongst qualified tight ends. He has a fantastic ADOT. He has the 2nd highest ADOT amongst tight ends. He has the 4th highest air yard share amongst qualifying tight ends. He's just getting it done still. I mean, you just look at the games over the course of the entire season. One dud, one true dud, 2 iffy games, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 8 games have been top 10. And even last week, he did not score a touchdown. Every damn tight end scored a touchdown on National Tight Ends Day. He was still top 10. 7 catches, 77 yards, 113 air yards most of the season. He's legit, guys. Zach Ertz is legit. Zach Ertz is legit. And it's good to see. I love seeing it. I do. I love seeing it. So good on Zach Ertz. Again, 8 to 12 all week. And if you need a tight end this week, he's one of those that in our more casual seasonal leagues, he just isn't being picked up. Go ahead and pick him up and play him this week if you need to, because good matchup, top 12 matchup, top 12 tight end ranked, and he's just always knocking on that top 10 door. It's exactly what we're looking for at the tight end position. Let's get back into the chat before we get into this week in WoRP. Let's see where we left off. Dak, Oh, T-Rock in the building. What is going on, T? And like I mentioned, at 12 Eastern Standard Time, coming back to the South Harmon YouTube channel, the South Harmon YouTube channel, to watch Starter Shit with Eric Bannock, T-Rock, and Matt Dennis, I believe, is on the show today. Chicken Wang, what up, Chicken Wang? Tolbert, Judy, Demario Douglas, or McMillan for your flex. Give me Tolbert because I like the potential shootout in that game. So I'm gonna go with Tolbert. Cody's both of our co-hosts. We both do shows with him, and we got to give him credit where credit's due. One of my Dynasty teams, I have Addison, Ayuk, Ladd, Keon, Tillman, Douglas, and he's rebuilding. What are you holding on to this group or trading up? I think I'm going to hold a little bit. I think a lot of these guys are going to accrue value. I think right now Addison's at a bit of a pit in Dynasty. I think he's on a bit of a pit. So I think we should wait until he has a couple more games before trying to move on, because the prospect is there, first round pick, and he's popped throughout his career. I think I would shop Ayuk to another rebuilding team, and to see if you can just kind of split that asset into 2 assets and just kind of bolster up overall. I might do that, but Ladd, Keon, I want to hold on to those guys. Cedric Tillman, it seems like if you could sell high, maybe do it, but I don't know if you're quite there. And like I said, I think this is a player that can be in my top 28, top 25 each and every week. So eventually some contender is going to come sniffing and overpay. Douglas is just kind of stuck in purgatory. There's really not much you can do with Pop Douglas, unfortunately. But I think I'm going to hold overall. And if you do want to get out there and shop, because we all love shopping in fantasy, I think Brandon Ayuk might be an asset I'm going to be dangling. Do I trust Hawkinson in his first game back? Yep. Because I'm hearing reports that it's a full go-go. He's India go-go against Indy, and he's absolutely going to play. I have him as a top 6 tight end. He's awesome. I'm going to trust Hawkinson. I think if this was 2 weeks ago, we would have had worried. They continuously kept him off the field, and now I think they're going to fire him up, ready to rock and roll this week against the Indianapolis Colts in Sunday Night Football. Theo's in the chat. What up, Theo? How you doing? J.K. Dobbins or early to mid second on a smash contender. So if the second is on a smash contender, I want Dobbins either way. I think Dobbins is good all year. I think at this point, Dobbins. And if I'm in rebuild mode, it's not time to sell running backs. You want to wait up a couple more weeks if your league allows it, because teams will get absolutely dumb, stupid, desperate for running backs very, very soon. Start Devon Achane or Ken Walker. Oh, humble brag in the house. Humble brag in the house. I got Achane at 7 and Kenneth Walker at 9. I'm going to play Achane. Kenneth Walker's been awesome, but I'm playing Achane because those targets have been so ridiculously good. So I'm going to go with Achane here. Pick 2 half-point PPR. Dowdle, Rashad White, Marv Harrison, or Brian Robinson. So in 2, I'm going to go with Marv and Brian Robinson there. I'm going to go. Yeah, you can do that too, but I got you. We're game planning here, and then you're going to finish it over there at the starter ship with the boys. Full point PPR, 1 QB and 2 wide receivers, Mahomes, Darnold, Williams, BTJ, Dubs, Shakur. So the quarterback, I'm going Mahomes. I'm putting all the eggs in the Mahomes basket this week. I think this is the week where we see him go, oh, shit, Mahomes is here. He's making a statement. This is the game. I called it last week. I might have been a week early. This week, Mahomes, I got him at quarterback 2. Love that matchup against the Swiss cheese secondary of the Buccaneers at home tomorrow. And then the wide receiver, need 2 of them. I'm going to go with Shakir and BTJ. I'm going to leave Dubes off that list. Bad weather is projected in Green Bay. Money Matty Morning Lives. What up, Christian? Good. Thank you for coming in the chat. Knicks or Patty Mahomes? I am going to go Patty Mahomes. Like I said, I got him at 2, but I do love Knicks this week. Knicks or Darnold, 4-point PPR? Let's go with Knicks because Knicks also has that rushing upside. He's been a sneaky rusher this year. Rico, D-Hop, or Chubb, full-point PPR, need 1. I'm going to go with D-Hop. I'm going to go D-Hop. Like I said, I'm buying into that passing attack this week, so I'm going D-Hop. Mooney, Pittman. Actually, I'm going to go Rico Dowdle. Without Zeke, I'm going to go Rico slightly. Rico slightly because I do think he'll get some targets too, so I'm going to go Rico Dowdle. Mooney, Pittman, or Mostert. Give me Michael Pittman, top 15 play for me, Raffy. So I love Pittman this week. I'm back on it. Let's go with Michael Pittman. Trying to buy Bijan Robinson right now for my contender. Is he still worth the first? Hell yes. Hell yes, he's worth the first. Absolutely. Especially if you're contending. You're talking mid to late. Yeah, I'm getting Bijan all day long. This is going to be a big game for Bijan too. I got Bijan as my number 3 running back. I think he tears it up against the Cowboys. Flacco or Knicks, Komet or Ertz. Give me Knicks. Starting Waddle or Coleman. Oh man, that's a tough one because Coleman's looked so freaking. He's looked awesome these last couple weeks. But I'm gonna go Waddle. I'm gonna go Waddle just slightly. Colts or Colts. This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. Yep, we're gonna go Colts there, Chase. So let's go Colts. Anyhow, Cody's going to kill me because he is a Vikings fan. All right. This is a segment that I like to call This Week in WoRP. Essentially, I head over to SouthHarmonFF.com. I use the WoRP tool, and then I kind of look through the trends, and I developed 3 takes based off of the WoRP charts. And if you aren't using WoRP, you got to. WoRP is unbiasedly the best tool to use in fantasy football. It allows you to see value that transcends positions when you're trying to dictate who's more valuable in fantasy, who's going to bring more wins to my team based on a replacement level statistic. It's going to be displayed perfectly when you use WoRP. And I use a lot of big words there, but WoRP just gets your brain going. It just massages the neurons and makes you smarter. That's why you got to go to SouthHarmonFF.com, get the WoRP tool, and then dominate your league mates. And then you can laugh your way all the way to the proverbial bank when you just dunk on all your league mates. Use WoRP. So 3 takes based on WoRP. This week in WoRP, the first player that I need to talk about is George Kittle. George Kittle might be the most valuable player this season in fantasy. He might be the WoRP MVP so far. So I got to talk to you about George Kittle. George Kittle is the 6th highest player. This isn't our 1 QB seasonal formats, but it's going to be relative. Of course, he's going to be lower in Superflex, but relative to the position, he's still going to be a massive standout. George Kittle is a top 6 player overall in WoRP. Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin are the 5 ahead of him. So technically you can make the argument he's top 5 in WoRP this year. Adjusted WoRP, wins over replacement. He's been so good for fantasy purposes. He's clearly the tight end 1 right now on points per game and in overall. 18 fantasy points per game. And this is a position where you are striking out if you went Laporta in the 3rd or 4th. You are really, you're kind of licking your wounds if you drafted Kelsey early or Andrews early. It's been a bad position, but Kittle, if you stayed in the pocket, took him, right around pick 65, 70, wherever he was going to the league, he's returned a massive investment on your team. And he's missed a game, but that's all right. It sucks that he missed week 3, but he came back strong right after that. And if you take away week 1 was the only week in which he didn't really make a difference in terms of fantasy points. He was still tight end 10 overall the week with 8 points. But after that, 1, 4, 3, 2, 8, 4, 4 games over 20 fantasy points, 5 games over 15 fantasy points in the one. Other than that, 14.5. He's been unreal. He's been dominant at the position. When you look at his analytical profile, it just completely backs up the surface stats that we've been using for fantasy football. 2nd in yards per route run, 5th in yards per target, 1st in yards per team pass attempt, first in total touchdowns, fourth in yards after catch, third in ADOT, first in red zone targets. The volume's there, the production's there, the efficiency's there, and the WoRP tells us that it's real. George Kittle right now might be the WoRP MVP, especially in us seasonal drafters where these lineups were built through the draft and a number of teams are just floundering at a position because they went with Laporta, Kelsey, or Pitts. Pitts has been up and down. He's been all right. But Kincaid's been rough. It's been rough for the position, except for Kittle. He's been great. Now, the next highest tight end, Brock Bowers, who we do love, 24th overall in WoRP. A sizable gap between Kittle and Bowers. And after Bowers, there's another very sizable gap to the next tight end, who's Trey McBride. It's a bit unbelievable when you look at the outlier that is George Kittle. McBride's 40th in WoRP. There's really been one truly valuable outlier at this position, and it's been George Kittle. So you got to love George Kittle. The next player that I'm going to talk about after looking at the WoRP, CJ Stroud, he's kind of been a fantasy bust. He's been a decent NFL player. I don't believe that Stroud has been particularly bad on the field. Because when you look at the analytical profile, it's still pretty good. He's throwing the ball downfield. He's 7th in air yards. He's 6th highest in money throws. He's good coming off play action. He's good in the red zone. He's been fairly accurate. He's really still the quarterback that we expected, but production-wise, he's really kind of fallen flat. Especially in our 1QB leagues, our seasonal 1QB leagues, where he was drafted to be a difference maker. And he was, QB3 to QB5 off the board. And he just hasn't been that. He's outside of the top 100 in terms of overall wins over replacement. He's QB 11 in WoRP, and he just hasn't been a difference maker. He's QB 15 overall, QB 21 in fantasy points per game. So even on the fantasy field, he just hasn't been good. We've seen his completion percentage go up from his rookie year. I think the player is evolving. I think he's still a good player. If I'm a Houston Texans fan, I'm more than happy that CJ Stroud is my quarterback for the present and the future. But in fantasy, it's time to move on. It's time to start making other arrangements, especially now at week 9. The clock is running out, folks. If you're looking to win this year, the clock is running out. It's time to start making moves beyond CJ Stroud because, again, when he's been as valuable in terms of his wins over replacement as guys like Amari Cooper, who's been a bit of a flop this season, a guy like Tyrone Tracy, who only really started doing something a month ago, it's not good, especially in our 1QB leagues. In our Dynasty Superflex, I'm not panic selling. Like I said, I think the player's still there. The analytical profile suggests that he's still a very good quarterback. But in our 1QB leagues, no mas. It's really time to start looking for other arrangements at quarterback. And the last bit of WoRP this week in WoRP that I want to talk about is the Lions offensive line. This has nothing to do with fantasy directly, but indirectly it has such value. Such value. When you look at the overall WoRP chart, you look at the most valuable players in fantasy right now, you'll see not one, but 2 running backs for the Detroit Lions inside the top 20. Jahmyr Gibbs is 11th. David Montgomery is 19th. Both of these guys are right around a win above replacement in 1QB leagues. They have been tremendous in fantasy. We're seeing Gibbs break away 75-yard runs. We're seeing David Montgomery score a ton of touchdowns. He feels like one of the only touchdown-dependent running backs that you can depend on. Again, both of this week, the industry continues to kind of rank them conservatively, and I'm saying fuck that. I do not. Gibbs at 10, Montgomery at 15, and you can make the argument that they're both inside the top 12. They're awesome running backs, and it's because of this offensive line. They're giving Jared Goff plenty of time to throw. This offense is a absolute unit because of this offensive line, and I know the WoRP isn't directly related to the offensive line. I couldn't decide whether I want to talk about Montgomery or if I want to talk about Gibbs. So I said, fuck it. Let's talk about the offensive line so I can mention both. Shout out to this offensive line. It's been fantastic. It's been the best unit in the NFL, which has just been so good for our fantasy purposes. We love the offensive line of the Detroit Motor City Kitties. Let's get back to this chat, and then I'm going to give you my Kiwoom call of the week, and then we'll get on out of here. We bleed blue. I watch that video every single week. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but I'm addicted. I'm not even a Colts fan. I just got to hear what he's going to talk about in that one line, that one bar every single week that changes. Yo, what's up? What's up going on, Sal? Thanks for tuning in. 10-team PPR, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. The running backs are Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane, Ramondre. Wide receivers are Garrett Wilson, 30 points. We love it. DJ Moore, JSN, Downs, and Tillman. Thoughts? Love this team. Love this team. But you're going to go with Taylor and Achane. Both of them are top 7 running backs for me this week. You stick around for the end of the show, Sal, because the Kiwoom call of the week might have something to do with Jonathan Taylor. And you need one more receiver. I got DJ Moore ranked the highest. I think he has a big game this week against the Cardinals. He's a top 13 wide receiver for me. Downs, I also like Downs. I got Downs at 16, so I like either. So if you're saying 2 on top of Wilson, or is it 1 plus Wilson equals 2, that's my breakdown. I go Moore and Josh Downs. JSN, good pickup too. Having him and Tillman, it's a good team. I like that. Ingram or Ferguson. I got Ingram ranked higher at tight end 7, so I'm going to go with Ingram here. But I do like the Ferguson call. I do think it's a little bit closer because of that matchup, but I'm going to go with Ingram. Murray or Mayfield. Give me Murray on the rushing upside, and there is still the chance that the Kansas City Chiefs just smother Baker Mayfield. It's absolutely on the table. Sup, homie? What's going on, Jay? Jacobs or Tracy or D. Smith for the flex. Give me Tyrone Tracy, baby. He cleared concussion protocol. The Lions are pretty good against the run, and of course, Jacobs has been banged up in his own right. I do like D. Smith. Devontae Smith's a good play for me. I got him at wide receiver 15, but I got Tyrone Tracy at 11. Let's go with Tyrone Tracy. I like Tyrone Tracy this week for sure. What's up? What's going on, Dylan? Season's on the line. Me too, brother. Oh, my God. My heart is already beating. I'm going to make some trades right after the show. Start 1 tight end, 1 flex. Ertz, Kmet, Taysom, Sutton, Bucky, Watson. Give me Ertz and give me Sutton right there. 1 QB, Murray or Baker. Let's go with Kyler. 1 running back, 1 flex. Dubes, Jacobs, Scary Terry, Dubes, or Downs. Dang, I wish you could start Scary Terry and Downs. That'd be sick. But I'm definitely playing Terry. He's a top 12 wide receiver for me this week. And then I'm going to go with I'm going to go with JK. Give me JK there. Start 2 PPR MJ Maserati Marv, Downs, Jacobs, or BTJ. Give me Downs and give me Maserati Marv. Give me Maserati Marv in that one. Waddle, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley this week. Which is the better matchup? I think the best matchup is probably for Waddle, but they're all bad matchups. I don't like any of these matchups particularly. With the bad weather in the defense as itself for Reed. Calvin Ridley is going to get Christian Gonzalez a ton this week, and Gonzalez has been great. But I think that Waddle has the best matchup. But if you want to know who I would play Reed. I would play Reed there. Herbert or Chase Brown. Let's go with Justin Herbert. I'm going to go Chase Brown. I love Chase Brown this week. Chase Brown is a top 21 receiver for me. I just want to say thank you for everyone that's tuned in, tapped in. Savvy, DB, of course. Fizz, Anthony, T-Rock, Rafi, Sal. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, tapping in each and every week. Chase, keep bleeding blue. Let's go Colts. This is our Colts. This is our team. Here we go. We're going to end the show with the Kiwoom call of the week. My Kiwoom call of the week is Jonathan Taylor rushes for 150 or more yards this week. The Vikings are missing a key component to their rush defense. Flacco is going to allow the offense to open up in a way that just Anthony Richardson simply cannot. And this is going to be a big week, Sunday Night Football, for Jonathan Taylor, who has looked great over the last couple of weeks since coming back from injury. So Jonathan Taylor, over 150 rushing yards. Let's go, JT. Yeah, dude, the bots are freaking out this morning. You are not lying, brother. Pick 2, Maserati Marv, Jacobson, Neighbors. Go to the rookies, Neighbors and Harrison. Jacoby Myers or Zach Ertz, 1.7, already starting Bowers. Yeah, I'd go Ertz there with the premium, with that almost 2-point premium. I would go with Ertz. He's getting the targets, 7 catches, 70 yards last week. So just want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for tapping in to the game plan week 9 edition. I hope we got those lineups game planned ready to go. Of course, you got to come back to the South Harmon YouTube channel at 12 noon to get the start or shit show, get that lineup advice, that finalized bit of information to help you make your fantasy decisions. Head on over to southharmonff.com, become a member of the shit community, get the WoRP tool, get the rankings, and join Patreon, patreon.com/southharmon. Get in the Discord. We are talking football all day, every day. We're not even just talking football. We'll talk a little baseball, we'll talk a little this, a little that. But the boys are always talking over at South Harmon. So we need you in there. We want you in there. It's going to be a great time. And of course, if you need anything from me, head over to the X app at Matty Kiwoom. You leave a comment, drop some in there. I'll get to you. And then, of course, like this video, leave a comment. I will absolutely get back to you and help you with some live decisions post show. So leave a comment if you have a question, and I will talk to you. So, guys, ladies, gentlemen, let's continue to keep game planning and dominate these most crucial weeks of fantasy football. And I'll see you next week. Bye.